This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so LifeLock wants to remind you to update your passwords. Using the same password across multiple accounts makes you vulnerable to cybercriminals. For comprehensive identity theft protection, let LifeLock alert you to anything suspicious and fix any issues. Start protecting your identity today with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
It's the Larry Kudlow Show. Free market prosperity starts here. Now, here's Larry Kudlow.
Oops, here's James Golden, a.k.a. Bo Snerdley, sitting in for Larry Kudlow today. Larry was taken under the weather. Expected to be back with you, business as always, next week. In the meantime, welcome. 800-848-9222 is the number to reach us. We have with us Kevin Hassett, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, Mr. Hassett, former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, also a distinguished visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution. He is an author, my friends, of a book called The Drift, Stopping America's Slide to Socialism. I, for one, think that train has left the station. But we'll talk about that also. With us, John Carney, who's Breitbart news editor of economics and finance. He is the co-author of the Breitbart Business Digest. Gentlemen, welcome. How are you this morning?
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Now, let's start out with this. Kevin, question for you. What is the state of the economy, the American economy, 1 month before the November 2024 elections?
Well, I think that one thing that's happened is that real incomes have declined because people's wages didn't keep up with inflation. And so Americans are feeling like they're much, much worse off than they were 4 years ago. But on the other hand, one of the things that macroeconomists look at to see, are we headed for recession is the jobs number, the unemployment rate, stuff that came out this week, looked pretty solid. And so I think that we're not like teetering on the edge of a recession, but we sure are worse off than we were 4 years ago.
John, same question.
Yeah, I think Kevin got it absolutely right there. The jobs numbers are very strong. That will be supportive of consumer spending. People will keep spending as long as the jobs numbers remain strong. And we got a really strong jobs report that just came in. Normally in September, it's a very bad month for jobs, and it was nowhere near as bad as it usually is. The reason why, just so everybody knows, at September, people go back to school. So you usually see a huge decline in the number of people on payrolls. Everybody's summer jobs ends. His teachers come off private payrolls and go on to public payrolls. This was not as big of a decline as we usually see. It comes out as positive after the seasonal adjustments. I think this is enough to keep the economy going for the foreseeable future.
Now, unlike Larry, I am not an economist. I'm just your average layman, read the news, follow the news, have for years. And for decades and decades. But I have some skepticism. I hear both of you say job numbers are great. Job numbers are great. Yeah. What if you don't believe the job numbers? I hear job numbers and the first thing I think of is, yeah, but can I believe this? This is coming from the Biden administration. And like the Obama administration before it, you have revision after revisions that come in later. And those revisions sometimes tell a very different story than the first numbers that we're giving. So, to me, again, not an economist, I don't have your background, but an average guy out here that just says, I have some skepticism about this. In fact, The Hill today had an article, Kamala's October surprise, and it was a fluff piece on it should have just been a campaign ad, but it was on the great job numbers. Is this real? And you can educate me, and feel free to educate me on whether we, the American people, should trust these numbers coming out of Washington, D.C.
I guess I'll go first, John. So the fact is that you're right. The numbers revise all the time, and sometimes they're big upward revisions, sometimes they're big downward revisions. We got a big downward revision, last spring when they looked back over the last few years and found that the Biden economy had created, just about 1 million fewer jobs than they thought, right? And so you're right that the revisions happen. But they are people that are not political that are adding up these numbers. And what they basically do, it's sort of like the census. They just sort of, call up every company and say, how many people, are working at your company this month? And then they take that survey and they blow it up into the jobs data. And so what'll happen will be they'll find out that there are like a whole bunch of new companies that they didn't call and things like that. And in the fullness of time, they wander closer and closer to the truth. But I think in the end, as a voter, you shouldn't vote based on the jobs number. You should vote based on your own personal circumstance. And if your own personal circumstance isn't doing so good and you're upset and you blame, say, the Biden administration, then you're right to vote for President Trump. And I think that that's kind of your instinct, too, is that, geez, you're saying the jobs numbers are great, but, my friends and the people around me, they don't seem to be as exuberant as the data you just talked about.
Well, we used to always hear the big difference, too, in job numbers. Yeah, but and look, I'm just politically, what used to be said was, well, these are just hamburger flipper jobs. Now, I come from a values family that taught me that any honest job is worthwhile. Didn't matter whether you were flipping hamburgers or doing whatever. You work should be respected, should be honored in our culture. But the point was being made that a lot of these jobs did not have a path to upward mobility. Is there any indication right now that as a society, we are moving the needle forward in terms of upward mobility for the American people? John, let me ask you that question.
Sure. This goes to some of the weaknesses that have been in the jobs report. For the second month in a row, we saw a contraction in manufacturing work. That's not a good sign. The manufacturing sector has been, according to the ISM, the Institute for Supply Management Surveys, has been in contraction for almost 2 years. So there are a lot of signs of weakness. A lot of the jobs that we've added over the past 2 years really have been in the leisure and hospitality sector, which, as you said, is real work and it's hard work, but it doesn't necessarily have a upward path for people. So there are reasons to be skeptical and about how strong the economy really is. And as I was hinting at earlier, if you look at these jobs numbers, the positive number comes from the revision, comes from the seasonal adjustment. Unadjusted, the private sector actually lost over 400,000 jobs. Adjusted, it gained over 200,000 jobs. And people say, well, how could that be? What happens is every year around this time, there's a huge shift in the workforce. As I said, people going back to school, summer jobs ending. So for a lot of people, it might not feel like there was a lot of hiring because in real life there wasn't. When the Department of Labor does this, it's not to fix things politically. I actually looked into this to decide in Breitbart Business Digest. Do they fix things politically in election years especially? And the answer is no. The revisions are pretty consistent. They're actually a little less in election years than typical. The reason they do this is because they want you to look at September and see if it's comparable with the month before that, and the month after that, so that you get a feeling for the direction of jobs outside of the variations that always happen every year. So I do think these numbers you should trust them. They're not being rigged. The BLS guys who do this are sort of data nerds who are doing it for the Republican administrations and the Democratic administrations. A lot of them have been there for a long time. And even if they get a particular month wrong or even a year wrong, over time they do adjust it so that we get pretty close to the right numbers. It just sometimes takes a little while.
Okay. I have another question for both of you. Kevin, I'll let you take a stab at it first, and then if you want to weigh in on it, John, please feel free. I have a story here, came out of Fox Business. As of August of this year, there are 129,712,000 native-born workers in America, compared to 131 million some odd in 2023, meaning that there has been a plummeting reduction of over 1,000,003 jobs with native-born Americans. And so the question becomes, it appears if you look at the numbers that unemployment has fallen for native-born Americans, while at the same time it has risen over 1.2 million for foreign-born people that are in the country right now. Kevin, what do you think about that?
Yeah, those numbers are accurate, and it's really being driven by the illegal immigrants, too, because what you're talking about is, there's this big change in employment of people who aren't U.S. born, and, the people who are here illegally, they're about the same number of such people, over the last 4 years, but there's a massive increase in the number of people that are here illegally. And when the Biden and Harris administration releases people into the country, they even give them the cards they need so that they can actually get a job. And so what's happening is these illegals are competing jobs away, especially from low income and minority people here in the U.S. And as you said, employment for native-born folks has gone down in the Biden-Harris administration because they've brought so many illegals into the country. They're competing jobs away, but also driving down wages. And so, again, we talked about how wages haven't kept up with inflation. One of the reasons is that there are all these low-wage illegals coming in and taking jobs away from people who are native-born.
I wish that the jobs numbers actually did a better job of not just dividing native-born and foreign-born, because I think what Kevin said, something very important there. This is actually being driven by illegal immigration and the granting of work permits to people who actually do not have the legal right to be in the U.S. under the law. The foreign-born population who are here legally hasn't changed a lot. They're not responsible for this shift in jobs. What's happened is we've been allowing a lot of people to come over the border, giving them work permits. So I think if you could actually break it out and show new coming foreigners who have come in under the Biden-Harris rules that are frankly illegal, that's the group that would actually be taking jobs, while the group that's losing jobs are both traditional immigrants who weren't born here but who came here legally and native-born. You'd actually see an even bigger shift if you could look at it like that. Unfortunately, the Department of Labor doesn't break it out in that level of specificity.
That is stunning. Gentlemen, hold on. We got to take a quick break. I have one more question for you when we get to the other side. Now, prep you right now for what it is. Price gouging. Since this is the center of Kamala Harris's economic plans, we'll tackle that when we get back. James Golden, a.k.a. Snerdley. Bo Snerdley sitting in for Larry Kudlow this morning. 800-848-9222 is how you reach us. Keep it right here, and don't you dare go away.
This is the Larry Kudlow Show.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so LifeLock wants to remind you to update your passwords. Using the same password across multiple accounts makes you vulnerable to cybercriminals. For comprehensive identity theft protection, let LifeLock alert you to anything suspicious and fix any issues. Start protecting your identity today with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Now, back to the Larry Kudlow Show.
James Golden sitting in for Larry Kudlow. He'll be back next week. We expect him back next week. He's a little bit under the weather. Bo Snerdley with you. With us, Kevin Hassett, former chairman of Council of Economic Advisors, distinguished visiting fellow at Hoover Institution. John Carney, Breitbart news editor of economics and finance, who's also co-author of Breitbart Business Digest. Gentlemen, I have a question for you. If Kamala Harris wins the election, how soon before she shows up at Target, Walmart, Publix, whatever your favorite store is, with a price tag gun and starts going through the aisles changing the prices of everything because greedy American companies have been price gouging, and she's promised to lower prices for everybody. Kevin, how about it?
Yeah, this is one of the most chilling promises that we've ever seen from a presidential candidate. What Kamala Harris has said, which is basically a spinoff of a proposal by your old friend Elizabeth Warren, is that the reason why inflation is out of control is that companies are price gouging, which of course is not true. Inflation is out of control because the Democrats spent like drunken sailors. And what they want to do is have the Federal Trade Commission regulate prices and decide what's a fair price and what's not a fair price, which is basically socialism. If that were to happen, then the government would be setting the price eventually of everything. And so it's a terrible, terrible idea. And it's just like one of the many, many terrible ideas that Kamala Harris has supported over the last few years, like ending fracking, ending offshore drilling, doing away with the internal combustion engine, having an estate tax that's close to 100%. So when you die, then you can't leave your money to your kids. It just goes on and on.
John?
One of the things Kevin just touched on is very important, that price controls never stop where they begin. They have to keep spreading. Because if you tell the grocery stores that they can't be charging what they need to charge to basically make a margin to stay in business, they say, hey, look, we're going out of business at the prices you set for us. So then you have to go back and price control everybody whose prices are going into the grocery stores. And then you have to start setting wage controls because you need to control the wages that that the workers can earn. So price controls spread throughout the economy. They destroy the dynamism of the economy, and they destroy innovation. They will absolutely cause shortages. If Kamala Harris comes in and pushes this through, we will end up with empty grocery stores, neighborhood grocery stores closing down, kids unable to get jobs. It is a disastrous program, and I'm really hopeful that even if she does get elected, that Congress is wise enough to say, we're not going to let you get away with this.
Okay, we have about a minute left. I want to get a quick answer from both of you. The drift, stopping America's slide to socialism. I think that bus has left the station. We're knee-deep in it. Are we? Is it reversible? Kevin, you up first.
It's 100% reversible, and that's what we did in the first Trump administration, is we took all the crazy socialist Obama policies and we reversed them. And that's why real wage growth was the highest we'd seen in a long time and so on. And so, yes, absolutely, if you recognize the problem, you can reverse it, and that's exactly what Donald Trump wants to do.
John, do you agree with that?
Yeah, fortunately, they haven't been able to get a lot of these things passed into law, so a lot of it is just executive branch diktat. If we get Donald Trump into office, he can reverse a lot of this, and frankly, we probably need to then start passing laws to make sure that they can't do this the next time they get in the White House.
I will tell you why I'm so skeptical. The idea that people are entitled to things that they don't work for is widespread in our society. And once that is enshrined in a society, it's very difficult to get rid of. 30 seconds for each of you.
Yeah, I think that you just stop giving people free stuff, like forgiving student debt,
Oops.
And then you get ahead of the curve on it.
The music
Absolutely.
stops us.
You get what you earn, and you don't get to complain about it. You're right. We need to instill the idea that people have to work for what they get.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great discussion. James Golden, a.k.a. Snurley, with you. We'll continue right after this. Do not go away.